Hello and welcome back, everyone. Flavour Friday. Today we're going to be talking about Great Britain in the upcoming game with the codename Project Caesar for Tinto Flavour number 39, and we are going to be doing this, and also we are going to be doing an AAR of our run that was a little over 200 years. Currently the run is sitting at 1559. We may go back to it a little bit, but that is where it is at right now, and so we will be talking about that, and in doing so we will be needing to look through kind of the maps for England, and since we expanded in the lowlands and France, we will probably take a look at some of those maps there as well. And so the way we're going to be doing this is we're going to be reading through the Tinto talk first and trying to hit some of the bullet points of our campaign, and then whatever we have left over that we didn't talk about, we will talk about while taking a look at the maps and such. So with that said, let's get into it. Hello and welcome one more Friday. We welcome the Friday, as is tradition, to Tinto Flavour, the happy days in which we take a look at the flavor content of Europa Universalis 5. Today we will be taking a look at the content for England and Great Britain. As a tier 1 country, it has a lot of content, it does, with 233 DHEs. These are dynamic historical events, so these are, you know, flavor events, and a lot of different content assets. There's also situations, these types of things, and so let's read the description. The English crown is still reeling from the treacherous rebellion which resulted in the underhanded murder of King Edward II. Just 10 years ago. Although the ringleaders were executed, several co-conspirators have been granted mercy in the name of peace. Meanwhile, his surviving son, King Edward III, has already proven himself to be a capable ruler and is making bold designs on the French throne, a throne which is his birthright as the grandson of the Capet king. In the north, our misguided stooge Balliol weakly contends for the Scots crown, while our loyal vassals maintain tight grip on the government of Wales, the Pale and Aquitaine. How shall we brave this turbulent years to come? Do we cross the channel and become a continental power, or look to the seas for global dominion? The answer is both. Okay, so we see that we have 31 unique advances that either pertain to our culture or pertain to our nation, and we have 233 dynamic historical events. Start out with an excellent leader, Edward III Plantagenet, and then we will have primarily English. So this is really, from the perspective of your culture, you're not immediately pressured. Some countries start out with like a deficit of cultural capacity. I don't think we do with England, although we will if we were to incorporate Wales. Wales, notably, is overlord of all these little ones, so these aren't all your subjects. Wales is the overlord of all these subjects, and they will slowly integrate them, so if you wanted to just do one integration, you could wait for that, or you could integrate Wales super early and then integrate all these little ones one at a time, something like this, if you so chose. This is a way to approach it, and of course we do get the work in progress in terms of it's all whip, don't hold anyone to it. Oh, wait. If you have any questions regarding England's setup or art, please poke directly at St. Dave UK. That is dangerous. Usually we don't allow the direct poking of devs. What have you done, Pavia? Pavia's doing this, and then he's gonna be off, and he's gonna escape, and St. Dave is gonna have to deal with all the pokes. Here you have the estates of the government of England. So one thing that's really nice here is that we do start out with without an abundance of like privileges, which is generally really nice on the crown power. We actually also see crown power 15%. That was not our experience. That's not what we started with. And we also see in here, there's one of these that we don't really like in terms of estate privilege, and that is, at least early on, that's this castle one, which gives a discount on castle maintenance, which if you stack a lot of that, this might be a strong modifier, but I think it gives decentralization trend early, so that's kind of annoying. But overall, you're kind of pleased to not see a ton of stuff already slotted in, particularly with the lords and clergy. Generally, you like giving away a lot of the burghers and the peasant stuff, so if you see a lot of stuff slot in, that's kind of nice, because you won't have to take the satisfaction hits to slot these things in. But we, roughly speaking, have a tabula rasa. That is a blank slate. England starts with a very obvious government reform, the Magna Carta, and a unique privilege. So, the Magna Carta is going to give nobles power and minus parliament-based support. This is kind of trash. so we slotted out pretty early. Not very good. Although the monthly trend to individualism is something that's kind of hard to get, so if you were trying to break into individualism as a value and you needed positive trend in that way, I guess this would be kind of nice. And Parliament-based support's not terrible, but as long as you can click a whole bunch of buttons in order to get support, it's not going to be that strong. But continuing on, yeomanry is one we really, really like. We like a whole ton. Because anytime you can get peasant satisfaction, this is a really nice commodity. You're going to be with it. So even if it was just 5% plus 20% and there was nothing else here, you'd be about it. But what it gives is peasant levy size, which is really nice for England specifically. Noble estate satisfaction equilibrium is a minus, and peasants progress towards free subjects, which is not really... I think in general, going serfdom early is maybe going to be good. That's something that we did. And we did it for a reform that is quite strong, which is universal serfdom, which gives, in the current build that the creators have, it gives 5 base control to rural areas. And the problem with universal serfdom is that it requires that you have a serfdom trend, and the serfdom is the opposite of free subjects. And so we were pressured a little bit on our free subjects, but we managed to make it work and have relatively high satisfaction. At the point at which we are ending the game, we are going to get off of universal serfdom and transition to a more capital-based economy, or we are close to wanting to do that, in which case we start leaning into the free subjects and it becomes not as much of a problem. But a lot of the estate privileges for the peasants will give free subjects, and so it can be difficult to push serfdom while simultaneously trying to push this satisfaction, which is going to be a bit of a thing. But we were committing so many resources at this point to get the serfdom in because we were refraining from slotting in some of these peasant privileges, and we had 2 government reforms. The one that we mentioned, the universal serfdom, which gives the control, and then we also had one that gave food, and we were only having it slotting in for serfdom trends. So this is kind of what we were about. We see that there are no more or this is a reform and a privilege. Are we seeing a few more reforms and privileges? So we had a couple other reforms and privileges that we wanted to talk about, which is that, first of all, we have the Shires of Scotland. Now, this one we didn't unlock. We were just aware of its availability. This is a Great Britain one, so I think you have to form Great Britain first, or this is Scottish flavor. But it gives 5 max tax, which is incredibly strong. Max tax is a really, really strong modifier. Generally speaking, we've been watching the AI struggle, economically speaking. The AI versions that tend to do well are ones that have efficiency bonuses or max tax bonuses, which brings us to the second part of Shires of Scotland. It gives 15% tax efficiency and 5 rural control. Before doing this run, and before double-checking this now, I was not aware that this was a thing, but this reform is just absolutely insane. It's one of the best reforms in the game. Legacy of Osman is currently, on the current influencer build, the best one in the game, giving plus 10 control, although I've left quite a bit of feedback that I just don't like flat control as a modifier, generally speaking, and so I'm hoping that flat control in a lot of places does get kind of peeled back a little bit, but this is just an absolutely insane government reform. There was also we have a couple laws that we're going to talk about, but we're going to be seeing some laws in here. So the first one is, this is what we wanted to talk about, longbow competitions. And this is something that is really, really big with Great Britain, is that their levies are absolutely insane. They have a ton of initiative. Great Britain starts with a modifier for plus... infantry power. Their levies are infantry. They get levy combat efficiency modifier, and then their levies have a ton of initiative, so they get into the battle quickly. And then because at the start of the game, you don't have a lot of defense, and you also don't have a lot of morale bonuses, what ends up happening is your levies get into the front immediately. And then their guys start trickling in, and then because you have 6 guys or 4 guys on 1 to 2 guys, you pew them down really, really fast, and they sort of single file buzzsaw themselves into the English longbowmen, and this is really, really, really strong. Having levies that have high initiative, and then 2 combat bonuses that are available at game start with your tech for I forget the name of the tech, but it's 10% infantry combat plus the levy combat efficiency that we have here in this law, is really going to add up to being something where England is really spooky. England is really spooky, and when we've played as France, beating them in the first battle, if you're not careful and you don't have a numbers advantage, and England gets more levies at game start, they're going to run you over. In order to win as France, because we are in the middle of a France run, what we ended up doing was we just hired mercs, and then we just kind of outmaneuvered them and just like took out their levies and did this type of thing. But they are quite scary, and so this is something that is tremendously interesting, and so the levies are going to really pack quite a bit of a punch for Great Britain specifically, and this is one of the contributing things. Next up, we have English Parliament, which is a mixed bag. It's a mixed bag because this is really awful early on. But it's extremely good just in the overall sense. It's just in the first, before you get barks and before the ambulance. Really, barks, the trade ships, the light ships, are like the ambulance for Great Britain, because Great Britain's start is really rough, in that when you start with Great Britain, you will have really low control in most of your territories. So just to come over to the map real quick, you will have decent control here, and then all the rest of this will be terrible control. And what happens with control is you get a malice crown power. You get a malice that is equal to the lack of control under 100. So if you have 20 control, you get minus 80% crown power. This nails in the coffin the crown power you're getting from the other areas. And crown power as a malice early on, minus 33% is incredibly rough, especially if you have a lot of low control areas. So we kind of made a little bit of a joke in a comment when we came in here with this 15% crown power. When we started our run, we started out with like 8% crown power. 8 or 9%, or maybe it was 8 or 9% after we put in a couple privileges. To be fair, they start with low privileges, and maybe that was a mistake, but you really want to get some things going with certain privileges and slot them in. I think we only slot in burgers privileges, which really shouldn't eat into your crown power very much, but we had 9% crown power, 8 or 9, I forget which one it was, but that means we're getting a 16% malice to tax efficiency, and also to trade efficiency, and so this is incredibly painful. However, once you resolve a lot of your proximity issues, once you start generating a good amount of proximity, which you can to the entirety of the British Isles once you get naval going, then this is just fine, and then this is absolutely insane, because as we mentioned, max tax is one of the very best modifiers. And so it's probably the case that you actually want to swap onto Favor the Wealthy, which is what we do on pretty much everyone else in regard to our distribution of power law, and then swap back on the English Parliament later, just to avoid this crown power malice. This is just too painful early on. But a bit of an interesting one. Agenda impact is also quite nice. Get you a little bit more juice on your parliament so that you can try and hit those 50 breakpoints. It also has two unique buildings, one that is static, the Cinque Ports, and the other that can be expanded, the Royal Forest. So this one is going to give us a little bit of monthly sailors, but it's really nice to have a little bit of extra sailors at game start, and this is what this is. I don't think we're able to expand it at all. It just starts in some spots. And then the Royal Forest. We probably underutilized this, 50% crown power plus 5% max control. I just really hated the malice to dev growth. Not being able to upgrade a location's kind of whatever, and it has to be built in places where you have a forest or woods. And kind of our best RGOs, we didn't really have places with forests and woods. We probably should have utilized this a little bit more, but like I really... The monthly dev growth is something that like kind of makes me like... I'm not that big a fan of it, but this would require some math to verify like what the control breakpoints are and what the dev growth breakpoints are. The more control you have, the worse this dev growth is, and the less control you have, the better the max control is. But it's interesting where you're getting 5 max control in rural areas, and then this can only be built in rural from the Scott Gov reform, and then you get this, and then you get 10 max control, and then you could get another 5 off of Universal Serfdom for 15, and then you build a bailiff for plus 30 proximity on like this version of the build. And so really allows you to push like a ton of control, and so we probably underutilized this. I think it's probably a mixed bag, but probably net positive, and so I think we failed to use this as much as we should have. I don't know what this other demand for goods are. Unfortunately, those are bricked, but we see it does demand wine, which is actually kind of nice, because usually wine prices get super depressed, so anything that stimulates wine demand is kind of nice. We get some starting works of art. They're artistic, this type of thing. And here are some of the advances available to England and Great Britain. So, first of all, we have our island home. And before we talked about how we answered a question regarding Castile and England that I think got misconstrued a little bit when we're talking about whose navy was better. We talked about how England has no unique naval units, which is true. Or if they have some, we missed them when we were looking. But it does have a lot of naval bonuses, and so as the ages go on, it gets stuff like heavy ship power, blockade efficiency, decreased cost, maintenance on like ships and this type of stuff. And I think in the aggregate, it probably has more overall modifiers than Castile. It just doesn't have unique ships, and I don't know if it's overall better or worse than Castile, but it's not like Great Britain has nothing going on as it relates to navy. But this maritime presence early on is really, really nice, because you need this. And unfortunately for England, unlike Iberia, you do not start out with a unique light ship. So basically the first 50 to 60 years of the game are incredibly rough. You need to, in order to spread the institution of banking, you need to be able to kind of trade with someone down to the south. And I think we got a little bit lucky, because in France, taking a look in Avignon, they made their market, and this market gained access to banking pretty early, and this market, I think, was within range of us in Great Britain. Or they traded with the Lowlands market, and then we traded with them, and we somehow managed to bridge it up and get banking, I think, maybe a little bit earlier than we should have. And the banking allowed us to get the barks, so we could actually start, pushing maritime presence. We have warbows in here, which unlocks army levies and the yeomanry estate privilege. We start out with this, and then here we will see the unit type, and this is the main idea. I don't remember what... I think levies just have 0 initiative normally, or like the peasant levy type ones. I think that these are drawn from the peasants. The nobles, I think, have unique levies that are drawn from the French have the unique levies that are drawn from the nobles, I think. I'm not 100% sure on that, but I think that the base is 0. There's also 2 types of infantry. There's infantry that's like kind of better at fighting, and then there's infantry that got higher initiative. And it's probably the case that the strategy is to have at least enough of the high initiative guys to saturate the front line quickly, and then after a certain point you want the ones that are better at combat. But as it stands early on, if you saturate way faster, this is going to be really, really rough, because base initiative is 1, and so this means you saturate the front line 6 times faster, or your roll is much, much higher. I think you do your percent roll times like the number of hours the combat has been, or something like this. I forget exactly how the roll works, but you're going to be way faster at joining the front line with the warbows. And then we have longbowmen, that is going to be a different levy type, and we will see, same idea, it's just the upgraded form, where it is going to be a later game version of this. Monthly maintenance, isn't this a levy? I didn't realize levies, I don't think levies take manpower maintenance. What is this about? Is this, if it was a, I think that this is just, because it's of a certain age. So the first age maintenance on infantry is 1, the second age is 2, the third age is 3. Right? So, or maybe it's 2 for the first age and 4 for the second age. I could have sworn it was 1. If that's the case, so sometimes you get access to next age unit 1 age early. And if that's the case, what's going on here, then this is like an age 2 unit that you get in age 1. I don't think that's what's going on. I think it must just be like that there's this thing, but sometimes you get like an age earlier type of unit, and so it's got the fighting power of the next age unit while being in the earlier age, if that makes sense. Or this is like my understanding of it. I haven't really confirmed this, but okay. We have more longbowmen, and they are going to be doing the longbow things. We have the Eltham Ordnance in age 4, which gives production efficiency. This is kind of okay, but you have 2 really good eco bonuses, and I don't think we're necessarily going to see both of them. And so we'll just kind of briefly talk about them. We got coke smelting, where we are going to get 25% tools output, and this is an age 5, so it's a little bit later than this, but tools is one of the highest demand products, and so getting 25%, getting an output bonus on tools is absolutely incredible. It is coming late with the age 5, but I think this makes you really pop off economically in the late game as Great Britain. And then also in age 6, 33% cloth output bonus, which is pretty strong. To be fair, it somewhat gets diluted by the fact that the colonies with plantations and cotton will outperform this, but just taking a look at the resources of Great Britain, it's going to be pretty nice for Great Britain, because Great Britain is really, really good at producing cloth, courtesy of just being absolutely covered in wool. There's a ton of wool in all of Great Britain. It's just absolutely massive. This is like one of the reasons why Great Britain's resources are relatively good. You also have a few silver and some iron to like round it out, but really this is kind of the unique like characteristic. And so the fact that you're going to get a little bit of extra bonus on those things is going to be nice. We also see English Bill of Rights, nice little pip, 1% of state satisfaction equilibrium. Happy to see it. This means you can tax more. And that's nice because you have a couple max tax modifiers. Not as much as France. France has just absolutely insane max tax modifiers. But you have the one that gives plus 10% max tax on everyone. We have redcoats. We didn't get this far in. This is age 6, but we have increased morale damage here, and this is an example of one of the slow units. See, this is not a high initiative unit, but once it gets into battle, it is going to be doing a bit better. And so... Also, let's take a look at the levies, because this is like a defensive bonus for if you have units around you. And generally speaking, a lot of the high initiative, high power guys are going to be of the sort where they are cavalry and they do a lot of damage, but they don't have this defensive bonus. And the thing is you have this defensive bonus with your levies here. Most infantry has this defensive bonus, and so once you get a lot of guys onto the front line already, then the defensive bonus starts to kick up in importance. I don't really know if it's multiplicative with other defensive bonuses or additive, and this is kind of an important distinction, because if it's multiplicative, it's really good. But generally speaking, I think cavalry's good early on, and then it starts to fall off, because as you get more defensive modifiers, the value of saturating the front becomes less. But more importantly, I think that you start to get... the ratio of units to frontage starts to increase, and you start to get over the frontage limit. And once you're over the frontage limit, initiative starts getting worse, because everyone rolls to get onto the front. Although, to be fair, you can only have so many guys rolling at one time, so I do think it's still somewhat relevant. But if you're saturating the front line, and you're starting to get these defensive bonuses so that you can't be single-filed out, initiative becomes a lot less valuable, and you start caring more about just like raw combat ability. And the other guys, the high initiative guys, are more likely, they take more damage and they're more likely to rout, if I recall correctly. But whether it's multiplicative or additive is pretty relevant. Just kind of scrolling to see if I think there are just, there are just no malices on here for the infantry. So it's like they get the relative to the standard troop, it's like they're getting the initiative for free with no negative penalties, but not having extra damage. But, okay. We belabored a little bit, but I do think that this is an important distinction, is Great Britain, like, pound for pound, is actually probably, in Europe, they might be the strongest at game start, in terms of military ability. Just because their levies are really good and everyone's basically on levies. The Mamluks are going to be stronger, if you count, like, everything, but just in Europe, Great Britain might have the strongest military at game start. They really have a lot of levies, too, because they have a big population. And so, okay. We will have Form Great Britain, which is what we did, and then we will have Great Britain, and you can see some of the stuff. Depending on when this screenshot was taken, we may or may not see... the one that we thought was really good. There's coke smelting, for example, that we talked about, the extra tools production, but we are not seeing the, what was it, the Shires of Scotland in here. Or we don't have eyes. We probably don't have eyes. It's probably in here somewhere. But depending on... No, wait, the Shires of Scotland's not a tech. So, okay. It's a gov reform. As we have shown the Tinto flavor for Castile and Spain, there will be several dozen dynamic events for the British flag, depending on which part of Britain, part of it, age, country rank, etc. Yeah, we didn't start out with the Union Jack, and then we got the Union Jack. Now let's take a look at the narrative content for England and Great Britain. The most important one in the game is obviously the 100 Years' War situation, which we talked in depth at Tinto Talks some months ago. I think we fought 4 wars to win the 100-Year War. But we have France demands Sire Robert d'Artois. The AI will always do the belligerent option, it seems to me. And so France demands them, and we say, defy the French king and prepare for an invasion. And then we will have, we can no longer disregard the fact that the French claims their Salic law makes King Philippe the so-and-so de Valois, the King of France, when it clearly should be King Edward III, Plantagenet, as his mother, Dame Isabella, the she-wolf Capet, and the sister, King Charles IV, Fair Capet. We got the personal union over France, and we've left feedback on this, and this is going to change before release, almost certainly, but we got the personal union, and then, because we have this claim, right? Because we have a different succession law is the reason why than France is the reason why France had their succession, and then we're claiming that it should have been ours because different succession law. Because there's a different succession law in England and France, within 5 years of us having the personal union, our ruler died, and we had a woman succeed the throne. France doesn't recognize women that succeed the throne, and when you have a different ruler come to the throne, when you have a ruler die in a personal union, it bricks the union. So we had our union bricked. After like four wars to, beat up France enough to personal union them, because you have to take 20% of the land, we lost it. We eventually subjugated all of France, but in the wars, what we took is we mainly transferred subjects, Brittany, Normandy, Flanders, and took lands in the north, looking to get the entire areas that was in North France, because we knew we would be able to push a lot of control there eventually. And so here is some more pictures of the 100 Years' War. We didn't really influence any French subjects because we were strong enough to just kind of fight France even through their subjects. I think that eventually it would have probably gotten a little bit nasty, but man, oh man, if you do increased levies in the parliament and then you have these monstrous levies, it's really hard to lose. You're just very strong. The biggest thing is just handling the logistics, where you have to take all of your guys over here and put them over here, and this takes some time, and so if you somehow got caught out there, that would maybe be an issue. But if you're just very, you have to be quick about it, but you have enough boats to just have them cross over or walk over in like groups of like 6,000 to 7,000 or something like this. Okay, besides that, we have plenty of events for the early game. There was a ton of events, especially a lot of artists, but we have Order of the Garter, inspired by the legendary Arthurian Knight of the Round Table. King Edward III Plantagenet expects to reform his legendary Brotherhood of Knights, his elite retinue. We could, of course, bestow this honor upon the Knights, King's noble favorites, but there are many other groups from the English society who would benefit from the patronage. Oh, I think this gave us a law. Yeah. Okay, I remember this. And one of these laws gives like plus 200% noble power, which kind of is a little bit rough, but then it gives an additional cabinet slot. And I think that's what we went with. Or maybe it was plus 100%. It was a lot of power to the nobles. We have the Ordinance of the Labourers. The Ordinance of the Labourers is hereby drafted in response to the outbreak of the Black Death in England. The declining population has created a shortage of labor. Notably, England has a really high population. Western Europe has higher population, and this is a really significant advantage. It makes your economy way bigger. It makes your military way bigger because it lets you have more manpower. Manpower buildings, so you don't. Right now, the AI is weak, and so you can just run over the AI, and you don't actually need the amount of manpower. You don't need to maximize your buildings, but if the AI gets stronger, manpower building, there's one base level, and the entire marginal levels scale entirely with your population size. And so if you have low population, you don't get to build very many more manpower buildings. And so having a lot of pop is really important for, like, not just the eco side, but also the war side as well. But the decline in population has created shortage of labor, womp womp, leading to a stiff competition between landowners and successive inflation. The surviving yeomanry are able to demand higher wages and greater freedom, which in turn leads to more goods being produced at a more expensive price. The ordinance is intended to fix wages and introduce price control, etc., something about servants, and we get this, which is the Ordinance of Laborers, which is bad. We don't want to trade noble satisfaction for peasant satisfaction, so we don't want that in there. We get Geoffrey Chaucer, who is an author, and you get works of art, and he has a lot of artist power. Generally speaking, I think I left feedback about this. I think the artists are, generally speaking, as a mechanic, kind of weak. The primary... they're really not giving you a lot of cultural tradition or assimilation or cultural influence, and what they're giving you is like a trend towards your prestige, but overall I think it's a little bit on the weak side. But you get a ton of artist events, and here he is making the Canterbury Tales, which is a part of the books. So it's a book, a famous book. It's actually like one of the oldest books that still gets like translated and updated and this type of thing. 14th century. It's in Old English, so you have to like translate it into modern English. But if I recall correctly, like it's impossible to read 14th century English, basically. But this is going to be a thing that you get, and we noticed just a ton of artist events, which is super cool to like read through it and the works and this type of thing. A lot of flavor. We have the War of the Roses, may trigger in the 1400s, related to a fight for the throne between the throne of House Lancaster and York. We didn't trigger this, so we didn't get this in our playthrough. Two junior branches of Plantagenet, the House of Lancaster and the House of York, both claim to be the rightful heir of the throne of England. Sporadic fights between the supporters have already broken out in a number of provinces around the country. Their heraldic symbols, a red rose and a white rose, have already become synonymous with the conflict now commonly known as the War of the Roses. Which, incidentally, if you're a Game of Thrones fan, the House of the Dragon, is kind of a ripoff of War of the Roses. But we will get more mid-game content, Court of the Star Chamber. I think that this gives this thing, which is not very good, but justice is currently dispensed to the best capacity of the common law, yet proceedings are tediously slow as they rely on precedent and the decision of judges. Certain cases take weeks, if not months, before a verdict is reached. There are calls for a secondary judicial court with a certain degree of flexibility in its procedures, allowing it to handle cases considered too sensitive or complex for ordinary law courts. However, a potential but modest effect could be the extension of the crown power, suppressing opposition and punishing dissent when needed. This is a government reform. I think it's not worth the slot. Monthly legitimacy is kind of an annoying negative, and communalism is not something we're specifically trying to push that often, and monthly control is really kind of a whatever modifier, because you get up to your control kind of quick, and then even then, your control gain, I think, is like 0.5 if you have relatively good proximity, so plus 0.1 isn't even really that good, and if you need to push something up really fast, you could use the cabinet action, and 10% crown power is not insane, so, and you already have good reforms as England, so your reform slots as a resource is already pressured a little bit, and I just think that this is kind of like unusable. Bill Shakespeare. We left some feedback on this. It seemed like our Globe Theater was bugged and we couldn't build it. But by all accounts, the English court is home to some of the world's most renowned artists, from playwrights to poets and even actors. All these men of culture have worked tirelessly to elevate our name in the golden pages of history. All these men, because women weren't allowed to be actresses. Womp womp. However, one man not only combine mastery in all those arts, but is also currently striving and elevating them to unprecedented heights. Bill himself is the prodigal example of the highest regard, in which many artistic fields has explored human and social themes in newfound depth. So we will get the Globe Theater, unless it's bugged. The talented Bill Shakespeare is proposing a timber-based outdoor entertainment venue to be constructed on the south bank of the Thames. To facilitate his many plays, the construction itself would be mainly financed by his playing company, the Lord Chamberlain's Men, but the theater proximity to the river makes it prone to suffer damage in the event of flooding at times of particularly high tide. As such, the wharf of raised earth where timber revetments ought to be constructed to raise the building above its perceived flood level. Do they not show the building? Oh, the building gives like plus 10% literacy to the burghers and the nobles, I think. So quite a strong building. I forget exactly what it gives, but it is something that you do want to be building. And then we get a work of art, the Romeo and Juliet, for angsty teenagers to think this is an awesome love story, when in reality it's like a cautionary tale and just teenagers being stupid. Shout out to teenagers. It's like, oh no, we're gonna drink the poison, and then the other person, yeah, okay, whatever. It's also just grudge matches are a bad thing as well. It's just a perfect example of bro, you get in over your head in under a week over this chick, and then you yeah, okay. It's a cautionary tale, it's a cautionary tale. Let's move on. The rise of the parliamentarians. We will get the tensions between King Edward IV and Black Plantagenet and the parliamentarians has reached a boiling point. Discontent over the central authority, taxation, and religious policies of the galvanized factions within the English court, leading to an open revolt. Parliamentarian rebels in support of Sir Gerald de Rochester has taken up arms against the status quo, demanding greater influence and the curbing of state prerogatives. Their cause has gained significant support amongst the lords and bourgeoisie, except the English version, and disaffected masses. The future of England now hangs in the balance as the nation is plunged into the throes of civil war. Uh-oh. We did not hit a civil war, which is good for us, and minus 33% manpower. Interesting. Notably, revolutions are pretty easy to deal with because they don't take your standing army ever. So once you have a decent sized standing army, you'll just never lose to your rev, unless someone big sides with the rev. Which, to be fair, as the AI gets stronger, this will be more of a concern. We have the Royal Society. This is, I think, late game content, so we probably haven't spawned this yet. The greatest gathering of scientific minds has produced some of the greatest inventions in history. We could set up an independent body governed by its own council and headquarters in London to promote science and benefit and recognize the support of our outstanding science. It would also provide scientific advice and policy for education, applying focus to our research efforts. I feel like we've gotten a ton of events with them with this art, though. Maybe we did get the Royal Society because we get events that give us research, but okay. This is a building, the Royal Society, monthly research progress 0.05, which this is really good modifier. This is a really strong modifier. It's extremely rare. Korea gets 0.1, which is really strong. You have 1%. You have a base research value of 1. Okay, and then your liturgical language can give you up to 0.2. It's been nerfed since the May version, which would give you a full point based on your liturgical language. So, for the most part, for most countries that do not have some form of flat research progress, because I don't think there's any in the generic trees or this type of thing, the maximum flat amount you can have is 1.2. And then you get a bunch of percentage modifiers on top of it. But this represents a modifier that you basically can't get elsewhere that's really, really strong. Because if you have plus 100% research speed, this is going to represent, techs, or this is going to represent a full tech, maybe once every 250 months, so every 20 years or so, which is actually a good amount of techs that you're getting just from this building that has, not a lot of maintenance. Where is even the maintenance? Does it not even have maintenance? Just kidding, there's no maintenance. And so, this is pretty strong. You do have to pay a little bit of extra money, but, okay. We will have Pride and Prejudice, yet another book, literary credits, etc., and it is going to be a magnum opus. Artist gains 3% artistic skill, and also cultural tradition, and much more. But that's all for today. Next week, there will be 4 posts, but scheduled slightly differently since Friday is a big holiday. So for us, we'll have a Tinto Flavor on Tuesday. Also, I'll be off Thursday and Wednesday, a likely story, and Roger will be in charge for those 2. So we will see tomorrow, Monday, Tinto maps for Shagtai, Mongolia, Manchuria, and Oceania. Just the remaining regions. Oh, just a ton of maps. Okay. Oh, Kurt. And then Tuesday we will have Tinto Flavor about Denmark. Wednesday we will have 2 more mid-game situations, the Little Ice Age, which we haven't run through it too much ourselves, or in a time where we're close to like the north, but we've talked to other creators who have struggle bust real hard through the Little Ice Age and the Golden Age of Piracy, which we've spawned, but I have zero recollection of it. And then we will have a Dev Diary number 3 about trade and the economy. We probably actually need to get caught up on these Dev Diaries too. So maybe we'll do all 3 of these, or maybe we'll do these on stream. We are going to be streaming tomorrow morning. We do have to schedule that, but let's move on over to talking about Great Britain. So first of all, just regarding the resources, let's kind of talk through that a little bit, because this does inform like the run to a good extent. So as far as resources go, we have the wool. We talked about that. There's a couple silvers, and there's a few irons, and there's a little bit of lumber over here. So overall, pretty well set up to like get things going. You're going to be... It kind of feels a little bit bad that you don't have more iron sources and more spread out iron sources, and a lot of your iron is in the north, because your opportunities to build a lot of tools in cities or really upgraded places is kind of low. For the most part, this is like the region where we had a lot of industrialization, because there's a lot of pops up here, so you're able to city those places up much easier, you know, because pop is a constraint in that regard. Just taking a look at kind of some of this stuff, is we do have a lot of farmlands, so these places will get devved up really well, and so this is really the pocket. This here is where you get a lot of industrial stuff going on, a little bit less dev up there, but woods aren't too bad. Woods aren't too bad, and they're not too bad for pushing control, but for the most part, this area is going to be control cut off, and then eventually you actually just push control more easily through the water to these areas, because a lot of them are hills on top of big woods, so that's minus 50%, or that's plus 50% proximity cost, and so that's going to be something that's a little bit difficult. So as we mentioned, you're having a lot of pain early on due to lack of proximity, lack of control, and this is exacerbated really hard, as we mentioned, by the thing you start with, where it's going to be giving you minus 33% crown power. Just absolutely backbreaking early on, but like once you get out from under this, England actually feels incredibly strong. They have that really big tax bonus, right, which is in here, and then they have, on top of this, they have the tax efficiency and the extra max tax from the Shires of Scotland and rural control. So I think in retrospect, whatever the requirements are for that reform is probably a priority, and we maybe should have gone after Scotland a bit faster than we did otherwise. Now, regarding expansion, we don't want to spend too much time talking about expansion, because it's like, I mean, we could talk about expansion quite a bit, but the big idea is that we went for north of France, and we went for the lowlands, and these 2 areas, we were able to get 100 controls in. Not the entire area 100 control, but this is also relatively early, and I think that the ebb and flow of the game right now is such that once you get Barks, Maritime is going to be way better for pushing control until you get Railroads, I think. So the first 150 years of the game and the last 70 years of the game are probably better for, or it's the first 100 years of the game and the last 70 years are probably, or 170 maybe the modern road is good enough, are probably better for pushing control via land, but the middle segment of the game is going to be better for pushing it navally, and we really got a lot of control in these areas, and from there, we established multiple markets. So we had a market in Antwerp, and so we have 100 control here, and it's a market center, so it has 100 market access. So we get like the full economic power of the lowlands, but our capital's in England. I was thinking of maybe putting another market in Brittany somewhere, right? Because we were getting like 100 control, or at least in the like one of these. I think we had 100 control and like 80s or 90s in the rest. But then we have a market here. The Paris market can push pretty good market access to Normandy. And from here, it's like we have 3 power bases on top of the power base we already have, because we can push control to all these market centers, which is really powerful. And the distance we cover is so much, because if we look at like the location basis, we see this, when you travel navally, you're traveling 1 segment, 2 segment, 3 segment, right? But if you look at it on a location basis, those 3 segments are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. That's like 14 distance in terms of land segments. So when you have the really good kind of waterways such that you can actually push control to decent areas, which you can as Great Britain, it really, really opens things up. Now, to be fair, you can also do this as France and the lowlands to some extent, where you're going to be able to push to England really well. But I think England is actually has the best placement for being able to push the northern. England is like between France and the lowlands. You got France to the left and the lowlands to the right, and so this is actually probably the best, or I mean, I guess like Calais or something like this, for being able to do this. The thing is like your disembark cost is going to be decreased percentage by your dev and decreased percentage by your harbor capacity, and since London has like 60 base harbor capacity, if you have 40 dev, you just get disembark cost of 1. And so that gets very, very cheap. And so in terms of the expansion, it just feels like you have this massive power base. And like we could have like 80 control down into France or something like this. You know, because once we're in Normandy, we're pushing south just kind of like normal business. And so the northern portions of France would also have really, really good control. Our expansion spot that we were going for next would have been Denmark, because Denmark, I think we would be able to establish like 90 control in. So this was pretty good. We also annexed almost all of Ireland, we annexed all of Wales, and we got a lot of this. We were kind of a little bit slow and methodical about going after these, but okay. The three war, or a lot of it was fighting France, and then a lot of it was chilling. We didn't expand as much as humanly possible. We mainly expanded to areas we thought were strong, and we expanded through subjects, and so that was the general plan. Something that we also did, which... here, let's come back and find Maghreb. Another thing that we did is we expanded in North Africa, and we expanded in North Africa mainly just because it was kind of the next area, and also because we could get CBs with the Deus Volt to be able to not need to use Parliament to get CBs. And our expansion plan was actually pretty straightforward. Is we just grabbed, we made a couple subjects out of territory we grabbed, and we grabbed market capitals. So we grabbed the market capital of Fez, we grabbed market capital in here in Algeria, and we grabbed the Tunisian market capital. And what we did is we got like one rural area, and we put down a bailiff in the rural area, and then we connected the road to the market center, and from there we were able to control all of the outgoing trade from here. So any resource that we wanted back in England that was from these markets, we would be able to control because we had the most trade advantage in these locations. So with the English trade power, we pulled the resources of North Africa back in, and so this was quite good. We also the AI really didn't colonize very much. It was just Spain, or Castile, a little bit Spain didn't form. And so we also were starting to get our triangle trade up and running in like the late 1500s. We had like 6 or 7 colonies in various spots of North America and the Caribbean. And we were, I think we didn't have enough trade range. But the thing to do is to attack Mali and then take one little snippet of land and then make a new market, and then that new market will be able to reach the New World stuff. I think that's like currently what the metagame is, and that's like what we were going to try and do, but we didn't quite get to it. Our colonies weren't big enough yet for that to be really pushed, so, or really good, so, that is kind of what happened. So I think the mega thread, we got to come back to England here. Or do we have, no, we have Great Britain. So, another thing is we tried to go Anglican, or we didn't go Protestant to go Anglican, and we never got the Anglican, any sort of Anglican content. So we left some feedback about that. We talked about universal serfdom, we talked about Navy being important. Another thing is, for our colonies, the Treaty of Tosadaias has dynamic naming based on location that it's made in, and you can rename that location. So for ours, we had the Treaty of Tortillas. And so, take that. And so, also, it seems very easy to culture convert, especially with cultural hegemon. And so this entire thing was like English by the end. Just everything we owned basically was primarily English. And also, once you completely annex someone, they culture convert really, really quickly as well. So this is something I kind of wish was a little bit slower, but okay. Your core language starts French. You get a couple events to swap on over off of it, and eventually we just took one of those events. But I think early on, having it be French is probably a little bit better. We already talked through the resources, and that's kind of what we got going. Overall, it was a fun campaign. We're not like super pushing the expansion because the AI is not really good at resisting anyways, and so we're just kind of trying to do something that we think is reasonable. We did subjugate France though because we won the 100 Years' War and we wanted to, and so the next step was integrating everyone, and we would have eventually integrated France. Yeah, so this is kind of what we had going on, and this is what we have for, you know, the Tinto Flavour / our mini AAR, or maybe a little bit not so many this time. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, please feel free to like, comment, subscribe. If you wanted to support the channel, a really good way of doing it is if you are going to pre-order the game anyways, you can pre-order through the website, and if you do so and use our code GENERALIST in all caps on checkout, it will send 12% of the sale our way. That's not a 12% discount. There's no discount for you, but if you wanted to help us out, this is a way that you could do it, help support the channel. Also, other creators are going to have codes, so if you want to support another creator, you should check if they have a code first, and also, if you want the development studio to get all the money, obviously don't use anyone's code. But, with all that said, I hope you enjoyed. If you did, or we already said I hope you enjoyed. So, with that, I wish you a Flavor Friday. If you had something especially flavorful this week, put it in the comments below.